This is an ancient technique that can leave you burnt. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and you might remember Connie from our discussion of little old ladies in tennis shoes. She's a career civilian who manages a collection of meetings for the Secretary and DepSec. And like a lot of little old ladies in tennis shoes, her strength is her connections. She knows that she can walk into any director-level civilian's office completely unannounced and get immediate results. But she tends to keep a pretty low profile. Once a meeting starts, you'd hardly know she was there. Now, just because she isn't talking doesn't mean she isn't listening. And today, she heard something that alarmed her. To understand what sent her straight to Beth and Gary, you have to understand something about the marksmanship policy. In a nutshell, they train soldiers to shoot, and then they test the marksmanship of individual soldiers. That training and testing happens separately, and when a soldier doesn't meet the minimum standards for marksmanship, when they're tested, they're recycled back for more training. Now, the DepSec has been advocating a change to this policy. There's a company in his home state that manufactures a high-tech system that both trains and tests at the same time and provides high-tech feedback in the process. The service piloted this system at a base in the home state of the DepSec, and the results were okay. And now the DepSec wants this system fielded everywhere. But there's been pushback. The systems cost a lot. They break a lot. They're not really designed for some of the climates they'd have to be fielded in. Plus, some commanders are starting to express concern that soldiers become too reliant on the system in order to have good marksmanship. That is, they essentially train to the test. But a new development in this has Connie interrupting Beth's hallway chat with Gary. She says, the DepSec just pulled the Chief of Public Affairs and one of his Special Action Officers into a closed-door meeting. And Beth is immediately wary. Why? The DepSec brought up the marksmanship systems at the Bud again today. General Foster kind of tap danced, but he got really upset with her. It wouldn't surprise me if they drafted up some press release and a directive eliminating the current system. And Gary says, but we're nowhere near being able to field the new system, even if it was ready. Connie holds up her hands and says, listen, I told you everything I know. The reason that these three are so concerned is because there's an ancient tactic called burning the ships that can really backfire in a bureaucratic environment. Sun Tzu said that when your army has crossed the border, you should burn your boats and your bridges so you make it clear to everybody that you are not going home. Alexander the Great did this when he invaded Persia, and Cortez did the same thing when he started his conquest of the Aztecs. Plus, there's lots of modern business leaders who are really eager to set fire to something. Any career bureaucrat has seen this tactic played out multiple times, and it usually doesn't end with the conquest of an empire. Instead, senior executives tend to resort to burning the ships out of frustration and the sense that there's an adversarial relationship between them and the bureaucracy. What Sun Tzu says is that you burn the ships as a promise to your adversary that you are going to destabilize them. And it focuses everybody within your organization on accomplishing that task. In fact, as long as Alexander the Great or Cortez's ships existed, they were a destabilizing force on the rank and file within the organization. But usually, when this strategy is applied in a bureaucratic setting, the target is not an external adversary. Instead, it's aimed internally to overcome some kind of perceived opposition in a forceful way. What usually happens is senior executives have something they want to achieve. So junior execs, directors, action officers, they move out to make it happen. And then they run into practical problems. In the case of the marksmanship systems, they're expensive. And while people are investigating that issue, they start finding other problems. They're difficult to maintain. They don't work in all environments. They don't improve marksmanship as much as they claim to. But what the senior executive sees in this process is a lot of insincere foot dragging from his subordinates. What it seems like is that the bureaucrats just keep looking for ways to say no. So eventually, the senior executives snap. They stop listening to the bureaucrats, they start making public statements, they start issuing policy, and it can all be summed up as, make it so. And for a few moments, everything seems okay. There's this brief celebratory glow. But there are no ships in the bureaucracy. Any policy that can be undone can be reinstated just as quickly. And so the reason that Connie and Beth and Gary are concerned is not because of the policy change that the DepSec might make, but because of the fallout such a decision might trigger. Cabinet-level staff and congressional staffers are likely to see the same problems of cost, fielding, and effectiveness. Defending this decision under that kind of scrutiny, that can be really difficult, and it might lead the higher-ups to question the judgment of the DepSec. Nobody benefits from this, so our trusty trio has a vested interest in making sure that this moves forward in the appropriate way. Beth says, I'll go talk to the public affairs folks and have Dale swing by the DepSec Special AO. Gary, can you get a draft started of an expanded pilot, something like a Phase 2, maybe a test in some more challenging environments? Gary nods along, and Connie says to him, oh, and you might need to bring General McNulty up to speed on this. He's been having Rebecca sit in for him a lot recently, and I think that's attracting the wrong kind of attention. Gary frowns and says, Roger. Then they all head their separate ways. You see, the bureaucracy isn't trying to ruin things. In general, what they're trying to do is achieve a common understanding so that we can make the best decisions possible for the resources we need. Now, if you want another way that trying to go around the bureaucrats can create even more bureaucracy, check out this video.